New Delhi, Pakistan on Tuesday rejected Biden administration officials' assertions that it is developing ballistic missile technology that could eventually give it the capability to strike the United States. But geopolitical experts say long-range weapons would be in step with Islamabad's shifting national security concerns as India and the US draw closer. The United States last week imposed sanctions on 4 entities involved in Pakistan's missile program, including the National Development Complex, which it said oversees Pakistan's development of ballistic missiles. Deputy National Security Advisor John Feiner said the sanctions were imposed after Washington and Islamabad failed to make progress in confidential talks. US intelligence points to efforts by Pakistan to develop equipment to test large rocket motors, according to White House officials. Just looking at a map and looking at ranges, we believe that this is fundamentally focused on us, said Feiner, at an event sponsored by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the Arms Control Association in Washington on Thursday. Pakistan hasn't publicly acknowledged developing long-range or intercontinental ballistic missiles. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on Tuesday said that there was no justification for the sanctions and that the country's nuclear program is only for defense. Over the weekend, the country's foreign ministry called the claim that it has hostile intentions toward the United States irrational and said that Pakistan maintains the right to develop capabilities to deal with evolving threats. For decades, Pakistan's strategic national security planning has focused largely on India, which it views as a threat. Political experts say that there has been a subtle change in its posture over the past decade. The United States and Pakistan were unlikely but close partners in a relationship shaped largely by US objectives in Afghanistan during the Cold War and after the September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States. But US frustrations grew over what Washington said was Pakistan's unofficial support for Taliban insurgents and more recently over the country's ties with China, which has bankrolled billions of dollars of infrastructure in the country. In contrast, the United States and India have drawn closer in the past decade over common concerns about China's economic and military might. In that situation, Pakistan's hardliners, Pakistan's hawks, think they need to think beyond just today and tomorrow, said Hussein Haqqani, a former Pakistan ambassador to the United States and a scholar at the Hudson Institute think tank in Washington, D.C. They have to think about what happens if there is a global conflict in which India is aligned with the United States and Pakistan is considered as a partner of China. Ashley J. Tellis, an expert on Asian geopolitics at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, has argued that Pakistan's objectives have evolved from India-specific to India-plus. He attributes that shift in part to the 2011 United States military raid that killed Osama bin Laden, mastermind of the 9/11 attacks in Pakistan, and believes that Islamabad seeks the ability to deter any future United States intervention on its territory. This objective goes beyond Pakistan's traditional focus on India, he said. India has said little on the sanctions or comments from the White House. Asked about the sanctions at a briefing last week, India's foreign ministry spokesman said, "India follows all developments which have a bearing on our security and our interest very closely. The moves aren't likely to affect Pakistan's missile programs directed at countering India, which rely on short and mid-range weapons. The Shaheen-3 missile in theory gives Pakistan the ability to reach India's Far Eastern Andamans and Nicobar archipelago." Zamir Akram, a former Pakistan diplomat at the United Nations, said there are both defensive and non-military reasons for Pakistan to work on the types of technology that can power a long-range missile, including the ability to remain on par with India's capabilities. India's military objectives in turn are increasingly focused on China. India's Agni-5 intercontinental ballistic missile is capable of striking targets at 3,000 miles with a high degree of accuracy, which would put major Chinese cities in range. India and China have a long-disputed Himalayan border and engaged in a deadly clash there in 2020. The technology could also be put to use for an indigenous space launch system, said Akram. Presently, Pakistan relies on China for satellite launches. We cannot foreclose the option for developing a long-range missile if needed sometime in the future, he said. But the idea that such a development would be a threat to the United States is ludicrous, he said. Last week's United States designations were the latest in a series of actions intended to restrict Pakistan's secret missile development, with several of the previous steps focused on Chinese companies supplying dual-use materials to the country. Pakistan has long relied on Chinese help for its defense program. The United States says that Pakistan has worked to acquire items for a long-range missile program, including special vehicle chassis and missile testing equipment. These sanctions mark the first time that the United States has sanctioned a Pakistan state enterprise involved in missile development. The administration is trying to ring a bell in Islamabad, said Haqqani. That seems to suggest to me that Pakistan has already made enough progress to get the Americans to react in this way. While Pakistan continues to bolster its missile development, India has also ramped up its own capabilities, driven in part by the growing security concerns stemming from China's missile advancements. This escalating missile arms race in the region has drawn attention from the United States, which has voiced concerns about both Pakistan's and India's long-range missile developments. However, Pakistan's recent emphasis on expanding its missile program to target the United States has become a new point of contention. The United States has announced new sanctions against 4 Pakistani entities, including the state-owned National Development Complex, citing their involvement in Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile program. These sanctions freeze any United States-based property owned by the targeted entities and prohibit American individuals and businesses from engaging with them. The United States State Department emphasized that the sanctions are aimed at preventing the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and addressing the risks posed by advancements in Pakistan's missile development program. This announcement marks a notable escalation in United States actions, as it includes a state-owned Pakistani entity. According to United States Deputy National Security Advisor John Feiner, Pakistan's missile advancements are becoming increasingly sophisticated, raising concerns about their potential reach beyond South Asia. Feiner noted that such developments could eventually pose a threat to the United States, adding weight to long-standing concerns voiced by India and other nations regarding Pakistan's ballistic missile capabilities. Experts suggest the sanctions may slow the progress of Pakistan's missile program and shed light on other entities involved in related activities. The inclusion of the National Development Complex, a key player in Pakistan's missile development, including the Shaheen-3 missile, signals heightened scrutiny of Islamabad's defense efforts. The Shaheen-3, with a range of 2,750 kilometers, is a cornerstone of Pakistan's strategic arsenal. The sanctions also highlight Washington's apprehensions about Pakistan's defense cooperation with China. Reports suggest that Beijing has played a significant role in supporting Pakistan's missile and nuclear technologies, a relationship further cemented by the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. United States officials view China's growing military and strategic presence in the region, including reported plans for a military base at Pakistan's Gwadar port, as a potential challenge to American interests in the Indian Ocean. While Pakistan has attempted to leverage Sino-United States competition for strategic advantage, it faces growing scrutiny from both nations. Islamabad's dependence on Chinese loans and defense support leaves it in a challenging position, especially as United States-China rivalry intensifies in the Indo-Pacific. In addition to the National Development Complex, the sanctioned entities include Affiliates International, Akhtar and Sons Private Limited, and Rockside Enterprise. According to the United States State Department, these organizations have contributed to Pakistan's ballistic missile program by supplying equipment and missile-related technology. The sanctions, issued under Executive Order 13,382, aim to curb activities that facilitate the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction or their delivery systems. Pakistan's foreign ministry has criticized the sanctions, labeling them discriminatory and citing perceived double standards in United States policies toward other nations. Islamabad's refusal to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty adds complexity to its global standing, particularly as it continues to expand its nuclear arsenal, which is estimated to include around 170 warheads. Experts warn that Pakistan's growing reliance on Chinese support for advanced fissile materials and missile technologies could exacerbate regional tensions. Recent United States sanctions also targeted Chinese entities such as the Beijing Research Institute of Automation for Machine Building Industry for their collaboration with Pakistan's National Development Complex on testing large-diameter rocket motors. This underscores the broader defense implications of Sino-Pakistani ties for the United States in the Indo-Pacific region. The sanctions come at a time of significant challenges for Pakistan, including a struggling economy, political instability, and growing international scrutiny of its defense policies. Analysts believe that while the sanctions may delay Pakistan's missile program, they are unlikely to halt it entirely, given the support from China and other actors. However, the increased attention on these developments could further isolate Islamabad diplomatically. As Washington continues to monitor the situation, these sanctions serve as a signal of United States concerns over the proliferation of advanced missile technologies and their potential strategic implications for regional and global stability. The enactment of American sanctions against Pakistan's ballistic missile program is a deliberate move in the larger context of global geopolitics.